It all starts with Haruka Shinozaki, beginning a new school year with plans to pursue the love of his life. However, he will be surprised to learn about his beloved's unique tastes and desires. Join me as we explore a story filled with new and interesting discoveries. Haruka is just an ordinary boy in an ordinary school, but this year will be different for him because Akiho Kosakahara, the girl he has liked since first grade, is in his class. Akiho is the quintessential perfect girl. She excels academically, performs exceptionally well in sports, and is also very attractive. During class, he often finds himself unable to stop thinking about her, even having some rather racy dreams. One day, feeling fed up with just imagining her, he makes a decision to propose to her. In the hallway, Akiho accidentally drops a piece of paper from her bag, and Haruka sees this as an opportunity. He decides to seize the moment, picks up the paper to give it back to her, and asks her to meet him in the schoolyard. Hours later, at 16H, Akiho still hasn't arrived, and Haruka feels hopeless. But then she appears. Forgetting his rehearsed lines, Haruka directly asks her out. To his surprise, Akiho agrees, and, as it's her first relationship, she promises to try her best to be a good girlfriend. She mentions studying 48 positions, leaving our protagonist very confused. The next day, leaving school, his childhood friend Shizuki, who's quite affectionate, jumps on his back, asking him to walk home together. Meanwhile, his sister Kaneda insists that since he doesn't have a girlfriend, the three of them can walk together. Without a chance to mention Akigo, Haruka goes with them, though he knows he'll need to tell them about his new relationship eventually. The next day, Haruka is at her table, pondering that now she's dating Akiho, she'd like to learn more about her. Just then, Akiho shows up behind her and expresses that she wants to know more about him too, which fills our protagonist with tenderness. However, the first question the girl asks is about his fetishes, as she read that not meeting those needs in a man can cause issues. Embarrassed, Haruka says he's just a normal boy, then class starts. After class, the teacher asks Kihu to carry books, and Haruka offers help. Hakiho thinks she has a slave mind, likes it, and treats him like a subordinate, calling him trash and pig. That afternoon they have lunch together, and Haruka notices Akiho loves fruits. Though she's embarrassed, he sees cherries on her plate. Haruka tells not to ask about her embarrassment, thinking there's a double meaning she doesn't want to know. Later, Haruka requests a picture from Kiho, who jokes about taking racy photos for excitement. But Haruka insists she only wants a face shot, and Akiho sends it. Later, Garuka overhears classmates discussing boys and how to attract them. Then Akiho arrives to give them a picture. Rather risque advice that horrifies the girls, as Akiho walks away because he realizes he hasn't connected with the girls. They whisper that Akiho is very hard to relate to, even though they know he's a nice person and all. But Akiho hears that, and can't help but feel bad. On the way out, Haruka offers Akiho to walk home together, and Akiho blushes, as she realizes that Haruka doesn't think mean things about her like the rest of her classmates. Another day, Shizuki shows up in Haruka's living room, and starts throwing himself at Haruka as usual. And then, flustered, Haruka introduces her as a childhood friend, and comments to her that Akiho is his girlfriend. Despite this, Shizuki keeps teasing Haruka, climbing on him and going overboard with affection and saying double entendre things in front of Akiho, until Akiho's face starts to turn different, and Shizuki realizes that she has gone too far. After apologizing, he decides to take them somewhere to take pictures as a way to reconcile, and for the first time, the lovebirds have a photo together. The next day, Shizuki continues to annoy them, and Haruka reminds her she clearly said the day before to stop meddling in their relationship. Shizuki then insists that if they're upset by her presence, it's because Billy's relationships need something more intense, while making inappropriate gestures with her hands. Akiho immediately thinks she should do something about it, although Haruka tries to restrain her. He then gets a text message to meet at the gym, and when our prota arrives at the place, he sees Akiho wearing a one-whip mask while calling him. After reassuring her that this is not what he wants, Akiho apologizes to her and assures her that he will study one of his XXX magazines better. At the end of the day, Akiho keeps thinking that he needs to make the relationship stronger so it doesn't lose its spark. He decides to kiss Haruka, but just as he's about to, her large breasts accidentally knock him to the ground. Akiho then apologizes to Kiho for constantly causing trouble, but Haruka reassures her. She says that they will decide together how intense the relationship should be, and that she shouldn't let Shizuki's actions affect her. With these words, Akiho calms down and chooses to affectionately call him, making our protagonist blush. After school, it begins to rain heavily, and Akiho decides to walk in the rain to soak his uniform shirt, hoping to deepen his relationship with Haruka. However, our protagonist has a folding umbrella, and they end up walking together under it. Gihu feels uneasy about this idea, as it involves being very close, creating an intimacy that costs them more than the other. Their issue is so significant that eventually, Haruka runs off in the rain with her. Once home, Haruka worries Akiho might have caught a cold and decides to send a message. At that moment, her little sister Kanata enters, and Haruka promises they will do something together that afternoon. However, when Kanata sneaks a peek at Haruka's cell phone and questions her about Akiho, she admits that she is his girlfriend. Kanata starts to tremble with jealousy. Despite feeling this way, she pretends not to be jealous and confidently tells him that she is still his favorite. She insists on doing something together later. Just then, Haruka gets a call from Akiho, and Kanata leaves them alone. But as she listens through the door, realizing how well they get along, she becomes deeply saddened. The next day, Haruka comes out of the classroom and finds Kanata, who is there spying to investigate Akiho. When she can't lie to them about it anymore, Akiho appears in front of them, and Kanata thinks she is a very beautiful girl. However, when Haruka introduces her as his girlfriend, Kanata again starts shaking with nerves and saying double-meaning things about his relationship with his sister to convince Akiho that he can't compete with her. Akiho interprets these words as having a double meaning and realizes she can't handle the thought of them doing inappropriate things in front of her. She gets nervous, but Haruka tries to clarify any misunderstandings, even though he struggles because he's too sensible. At lunch, Haruka clears up the confusion, and Akiho feels a bit calmer. However, Kanata spies on them, and seeing them getting closer, decides to interrupt. She states that surely her brother wants to have lunch alone with her. When Kanata suddenly approaches to give her a hug, our protagonist accidentally pushes Akiho, causing her to fall to the ground. Witnessing this, Kanata feels terrible and guilty, and she begins to cry. However, Akiho reassures her that everything is fine, offering her a handkerchief to wipe away her tears. The two of them start to get along so well that after this incident, they even plan to go out to a cafe together. Another day, Akiho sees on a TV show that cooking homemade food for your significant other is a good way to keep the romance going, so she decides to cook something for Haruka's lunch the next day. However, cooking is not her forte, and she ends up making a demonic-voiced black pasta that she doesn't even want to take out of its packaging. Then Shizuki shows up to have lunch with them, and Akiho notices the delicious food she has prepared herself, so he begs her to teach him how to cook. That night, the three of them get together at Shizuki's house, and step by step she teaches Akiho how to make a delicious stew. Akiho proves to be not very helpful, but he learns quickly. Throughout the preparation, they both make double entendre comments that make Haruka uncomfortable. When it's time to eat, Haruka realizes that Shizuki was later the first time she eats with her parents, since her parents are never there, so our protagonist is happy for her. Haruka tastes the stew, praises Akiho for its deliciousness, and after dessert, which is also a double entendre, the couple decides to leave. It's raining again, and though Akiho has his own umbrella, he pretends to forget it to share Haruka's. They walk back under the umbrella together, even though Akiho finds it hard to be so close to Haruka. Akiho tells his family Haruka will visit that day, and his father feels bad because she is the first time she brings a boy to the house, but the mother reacts calmly and even seems to plan something to make them uncomfortable. With 40 men left before Haruka arrives, Akiho decides to go out to buy food for her mother to cook. Haruka arrives too early to the house and Akiho has not yet returned, so he is attended by his mother. There also makes some double-meaning sentences and then invites him in for tea. While enjoying tea, Akiho's mother inquires if she has any sisters and remarks that Akiho is an only child. She then asks Haruka whether she should consider giving Kiho a sibling, which makes him uneasy. Nervously, he asks if she has any condoms, emphasizing the importance of family planning, especially now that he's dating her daughter and should be responsible. Haruka, trying to shift the topic, asks about a book she noticed there. The mother explains that it's a photo album of Akiho from her childhood, and he starts to show her the pictures. Then we learn that the breaking point for her to become so ill-considered was at the age of 4. Her father watches from afar, as he doesn't want to greet Haruka, and then remembers the teachings of the mother who all the time misinterpreted all the actions of baby Akiho with double meaning, and even taught her things too much out of tune for a 3-year-old girl. He eventually comes back to Akiho after shopping and brings dinner for 4 people. However, his name is misunderstood as some suspicious activity between parents and children, leading them to believe Haruka is a pervert. With no other option, before they eat, Akiho's father arrives, and they seem to become good friends with Haruka. He realizes it's challenging to be with a girl who thinks negatively, much like his wife. On another day, Akiho receives advice from her mother because she is preparing for her first date with Haruka, where they plan to watch a movie together. Upon hearing this, the father becomes quite nervous about her having her first date. He can't help but reminisce about the first date he had with Akiho's mother at the movie theater. Meanwhile, the mother starts giving very explicit advice on what to do. But the father interrupts her. He decides to offer Akiho advice on how to improve her relationship instead. Later that night, Akiho watches a TV show that suggests it's adorable when a girl tilts her head to the side. So she spends the entire night studying to find the perfect angle to tilt her head just right. Head. All day, Akiho watches and notes couples for her research, at the movies, on the train, and in the cafe. After the date, as they walk home, Haruka thanks Akiho for the outing, saying she enjoyed it. Akiho then realizes she was so focused on research, she forgot to have fun with Haruka and feels sad. To lift his spirits, Haruka offers him to have a second date to go see the cherry trees bloom. Akiho is thrilled, as it means they will spend more spring days together, and Haruka is glad that Haya is so happy. The next day, Haruka wants to greet Akiho in the school hallway, but she falls weak on the floor, claiming that she was so excited about the date that she didn't sleep the night before. Realizing that something else is happening, Haruka takes her to the infirmary. Upon checking her temperature, she finds out that she has a fever of 39 degrees. This means she will have to go home, and they won't be able to see the cherry tree together. Eventually, Akiho's mother comes to pick her up at the infirmary. Akiho tells her mom that she needs to get better before Sunday, which is their second planned date. Finally, Sunday comes, and Haruka receives a call from Akiho, saying her condition has improved, and she will be able to go to the appointment. When they reach the cherry tree, it's bare, the leaves having fallen due to last night's rain. Akiho is deeply saddened, but Haruka reassures her that she can see it next year. This cheers Akiho up, as it signifies Haruka's intention for a lasting relationship and future plans together. Meanwhile, a new student named Saijirina transfers to our protagonist's school. Upon discovering she came from Shirogin Academy, at the school for rich girls, her classmate keeps talking about her. Haruka is surprised she's so normal despite her wealth. But everyone is shocked when she says her hobby is playing with hairy men. Because of this, the other girls avoid her, making her feel lonely and awkward. However, the Dortolitos come up to her and introduce themselves, as Akiho, the class delegate, must ensure all the girls meet her. They feel like they belong there. Rina then remarks that she's surprised no one plays with dogs, hinting that this is what she meant by furry men. Rina also mentions that she doesn't know how to befriend boys, as she's only interacted with girls. After an awkward pause, she realizes Haruka and Akino are a couple, and asks what they like about each other, and Akiho says very nice things about our protagonist. Later on, when she understands that Rina is eager to learn more about men, Akiho brings her to the nurse to teach her about it. Throughout the day, the couple assists Rino in grasping the basics of how the world operates. They provide her with advice on subjects to discuss with both men and women, encourage her to try various games on the smartphone since her mother wouldn't allow her, and so on. Later, Shizuki shows up, asserting that she is Haruka's lover, and noticing that she is as close to a man as Haruka, and the girl, who feels so good with him, claims that she also wants to be a lover, which creates some problems. Misunderstandings cleared up, Rino asks Shizuki to teach her how to relate to men. At the end of the school day, Rino thanks the lovebirds for being so good to her and asks if she can consider them friends, which excites Kiho too much, and the three decide to be great friends. The next day, Rino enters the living room crying and explains to Haruka that an old school friend ended her relationship with her. Then Akiho reassures him that they are best friends now. In another moment, they decide to go to the zoo, the three of them together, also invite Suzuki, and the two girls are too excited and run around the zoo between the lovebirds. They run quietly in the place. Throughout the day, the four of them wander around the zoo, observing animals and engaging in numerous double-meaning conversations that Haruka can't escape, as she's up against the three mischievous ones. Meanwhile, Kanata and her friend Misaki, who is Kanata's opposite, find themselves both comfortable and nervous with anything suggestive. Simultaneously, Akiho's parents opt for a solo outing since Akiho is away, and they also end up at the zoo. Despite the father spraining his ankle, the mother thanks him for the date, as she had a great time. In the evening, Shizuki takes Rina out, leaving the couple alone, and they choose to spend time together. They encounter Akiho's parents on the way, and realize all four are heading to the same hotel, creating an awkward moment. Shizuki feels quite unhappy because her father gave her a personal alarm, which makes her feel like a little child. Meanwhile, Rina is thrilled because she finally managed to buy a cell phone using her own money. This is because her wealthy parents never even gave her any money at all. What excites her the most about owning a cell phone is being able to keep up with the fashion trends like her classmates and sending text messages that include pictures. The first thing he does is exchange calls with Akiho and asks what underwear she's wearing. If it were the other way around, he'd be in trouble, but being a woman has its perks. Then he discusses his phone antenna's range with Haruka and asks her to take a selfie to test her camera. They take the selfie together, and Rina starts playing with face filters, excited because it's her first time. She runs down the hallway telling everyone that a facial picture was taken with Haruka, and it appears to have a double meaning because everyone gives her a dirty look. Later on, Akiho seeks advice from Rina on how to sing as well as she does. In another scene, Akiho slowly approaches Haruka to mention that she was reading a magazine article about how to be a good girlfriend. The article suggested that she should give him some space for a while. However, he calmly reassures her that she doesn't need to do that because he enjoys their time together. Continuing with the list of things to be a good girlfriend, she tells him a girlfriend should know what her boyfriend is thinking. She asks Haruka not to talk to him for the rest of the day to practice this. Haruka, a bit confused, agrees, knowing his girlfriend is quirky and he has to go along. Then Akiho gets close to read his mind, and Haruka blushes at her beautiful face being so near. She misinterprets this as him seeing a ghost, for this ruins the romantic moment. All day, Akiho is behind Haruka. Avina notices he's missing a book or pencil lead, runs to help, and shares her book. Haruka's glad she knows what he needs, but things escalate. She chases him, buys his food, brings water to gym class, and everyone thinks Haruka is exploiting her. So he begins muttering quietly, feeling uneasy. Later, Akiho attends a delegate meeting to improve the school and suggests many unacceptable ideas, like XXX libraries for boys to explore their preferences, but all proposals are rejected by the class president, Saori. At another moment, Akiho has Hippo, and everyone attempts various maneuvers to take it from him. In one scenario, Shizuki decides to hide inside a closet with the intention of surprising her friend to scare the hiccups away. However, she ends up overhearing a conversation between her friend and Haruka. The conversation sounds misleading, and when she accidentally reveals herself, she realizes she had misunderstood the situation entirely. At the same time, over at the grocery store, Kanada's friend, Misaki, notices a box of condoms placed among the chocolates. Mistakenly believing these are some kind of super delicious chocolates, she decides to grab 3 boxes. This action completely surprises the seller, who becomes so shocked that he cannot stop his nose from bleeding while wraps up the package. Summer begins, and Haruka is very happy to see Akiho in his summer uniform that looks great on him. As they walk to school together, they watch as their classmate is her. A handsome man with red hair is surrounded by a large group of girls who are obsessed with him and can't stop chasing him. Later at the bar, Haruka asks him what would happen if from one moment to another, Akiho will start to behave like the other girls they chase. Sayo assures him that he must trust her because she's his girlfriend. Yet, as she turns the corner in the hallway, she sees Sayo standing in front of Kihu, one arm on the wall, almost pressing her. Haruka's mind races, and she feels overwhelmed with jealousy. She doesn't think Sayu is just flirting, but believes they are dating and Akiho is cheating on him. After a long crisis, she decides she must take action and talk to both of them in order to, but without being misunderstood or made a fool of in front of everyone. He then approaches and politely asks if they are great friends. Saijo tells him that they really aren't, and explains that he has a hard time being male friends, because all the other men take a dim view of him having so many female friends. However, seeing how Haruka treats everyone well, he wants to get close to him and be friends with him, and that's the reason why he was talking to Akiho, as he wanted to have advice on how to get close to him. After apologizing for the misunderstanding of interrupting him, both males start talking and start saying things that have double meanings between them. So now it is Akiholaki is totally jealous, as she thinks Sayo steals her boyfriend. At that time, it is so Avatar, the Day of the Stars, where everyone hangs on a tree their wishes for that year. So each of the girls hang stars with different wishes, some more communitarian and others a little more selfish, but it doesn't hurt anyone. Seiya wants to be with Haruka, who wishes to spend the next Tanabata with Kiho. Another day, during softball training for a competition, Akiho is very good. Haruka, feeling embarrassed, wants to improve to impress Akiho. So, she offers to teach him how to use the stick, and they go to a private place for practice. Akiho hears this and sees them from afar, completely misinterpreting the situation, which puts her in a really bad mood. The next day, the softball tournament occurs, with first, second, and third years taking part. Shizuki is present to cheer for Haruka, but our protagonist only wants to surprise Akiho with his impressive big stick move. After 3 fouls, Haruka begins to feel embarrassed, but finally, on the last attempt, she manages to hit well, although the ball ends up hitting Seiya's private parts. Akiho feels extremely nervous about the possibility of never having children, but she understands that she has taught her friend well. In the end, Akiho still has negative thoughts about what she witnessed the previous day, but Haruka reassures her by explaining that he was just practicing to play because he wanted to surprise her. This explanation makes Akiho feel very tender. While Haruka and Akiho are enjoying a relaxed walk in the park, they unexpectedly encounter an adorable stray dog. Unsure of how to interact with dogs, Akiho decides to offer him some of her cream bread, so that he can have something to eat if he feels hungry, while at the same time ensuring that it doesn't harm his health. When she decides to break the bread, she fills it with cream, and the dog begins to eat from her hand very eagerly, leading them to believe that he is indeed quite hungry. Then, they notice a ball nearby and decide to toss it, playing with him, and they discover that he is a well-behaved dog who knows many tricks. Akiho gives him the command to beg, and the dog starts licking under Akiho's skirt, which makes her feel very nervous. Haruka wonders whose dog such a dog could be, and then Rina shows up to call cherished dog, which doesn't surprise our prota at all. In class, Haruka finds out from Akiho that she is approaching the 2-day camp one night, and Akiho comments to her that there have been problems before, as it seems that many people get wild at those camps. Then, Hakiho, as the class delegate, hands out the rules they must follow. Later, the delegates and presidents of each class meet to organize the trip to the mountain, which is always too chaotic, and Saori explains the rules they must have so that no one gets separated from the group. Saori talks about how Hayatime manages her class perfectly, but the reality is that they don't pay attention to her and manage themselves, so she is really happy when the rest of the Council of Presidents and Delegates ask her to help them do their homework. Our prota's class finally goes down to the camp, and there Rina finds it too hard to climb, as she is not used to using her legs so much since she is a rich girl. Haruka is eaten heavily by mosquitoes, while she is in charge of preparing food not only for the rest of the students, but also feeds some animals. At different times, Akiho has to mark his presence to get Haruka's attention, because she keeps throwing herself at him, while Shizuki and Kanata can't help but feel bored, wondering when she can return to Haruka. She seems to have no life of her own if she isn't constantly rejecting others for her girlfriend. At the camp, they decided that the evening event would be a test of bravery for the entire class. While many are on the road, she has to scare them at certain points. Along the way, Akijo clings tightly to Haruka's arm, and our protagonist thinks it's because Akijo is scared of the darkness, but the reality is that he wants to keep him away from Seiya's presence, as Heya thinks he will jump on him in the middle of the road. As they walk towards hugging each other, Haruka tries to reassure her, saying that he will protect her, and then one of the council delegates, Sayo, who was there to scare them, but they have found her before. Then they hear in the distance Rina's scream and run towards her to save her, and realize that she has been scared by 2 girls in costumes. A ghost story. As the 3 are together, Seiya shows up with just a vine covering himself, causing total chaos. The test ends, leaving everyone traumatized by the shock of seeing Seiya undressed. During a bath, the girls discuss it being Akiho's first trip with her boyfriend, even though it's a school event. Isayu begins to have some racy thoughts, but Akiho tries to dismiss them. However, that night, Haruka appears in her room while everyone else is asleep to ask her to run away with him. Akiho is nervous, but knows it is her duty as his girlfriend, and follows him as they go deeper and deeper into the forest on Haruka's word. Akiho is more convinced that she is going to her first time and is very nervous, but is convinced that it is something she has to do. Then Haruka holds out her hand and tells him that she finds a place with a beautiful view, and even though it's a school trip, she's looking forward to the 2 of them enjoying a nice view while eating something tasty or similar to a picnic. After the camp, there seems to be an overcrowding of couples at the school, an accusation that does not please Saori at all, who wants to keep the school place clean and away from the impurities of teenage relationships. Seeing a couple leaving a classroom too much hugging, she gets angry because she knows they have been doing dirty things in a classroom that is supposed to belong to everyone and shouldn't be open if they are not using it. Then she quickly enters the classroom to see that no one else is there, but when she opens a closet she finds that Sayo is there, because she really likes to watch in a totally degenerate way. Saori reprimands her because if she witnesses something like that, she should intervene and stop them. However, Sayo's depravity is far more intense, and she just can't resist. Suddenly, they hear someone coming, and Sayo quickly forces Saori to hide with her in the closet, eager to continue watching. Sayo does this so swiftly that Saori realizes only too late that she should actually be reprimanding those present. When she finally manages to peek through the cracks, she notices Haruka with a girl who isn't Akiho, leading her to completely misinterpret the entire situation in the person who breaks a milk carton. Saori scolds Haruka for behaving that way there, especially with someone other than Akiho. After a while, Haruka realizes she misunderstood everything. To reassure her, he mentions Tanakaje, his sister, which leads Saori to think he's incestuous. Haruka attempts to clarify they just have lunch together, but fails, and Saori chooses to publicly reveal Haruka's indiscretions. Then Saori finds him in the hallway and starts to tell him that she won't expose him, and her first task is to write a letter of apology. Haruka starts to complain because clearly Saori misunderstood the whole situation. But she has to shut up her complaints because she notices that Saori, when leaving the bathroom, has left half of her skirt up and her underwear is showing. Haruka doesn't know how to tell her because she doesn't want her to try to see it again, but at the same time, if she doesn't say anything to her, she will be left with her own underwear, exposed in front of the other classmates. He then makes an attempt to tell her to pull down her skirt, but in a strange way, and she interprets it even worse, thinking he is saying perverted things again. Then she starts to insult him more and more, and when she thinks she has given the best speech in the world, she realizes that her skirt is up, and also realizes that Haruka tried to tell her in a half-strange way, and that's why Aya didn't understand. Feeling uncertain about what to do, and coupled with the embarrassment of having unjustly blamed him for things he didn't do, Saori begins to enter a crisis. However, Haruka somehow manages to calm her down in a peculiar way, creating a bubble of peace between them. In this bubble, they both pretend as if none of it ever happened, feigning insanity. Meanwhile, Akihu finishes her swimming class, and suddenly realizes she's forgotten her underwear. As a result, she decides to wear her swimsuit underneath her uniform. Yet, she feels the urge to quickly run back to the classroom to search for underwear and change fast. But on that day, Haruka is proactive, inviting her to do various activities, and Akiho can't say no. She's constantly worried that a sudden blizzard might embarrass her in front of the class and Haruka. Haruka leads her into the forest for a nice lunch, and Akiho Creek realizes she's in a swimsuit and wants to do daring things, so she's moved when she realizes Haruka simply wants to hang out and hold hands. Later, gym class ends, and as the class delegate, Kihu is tasked with storing the balls. Haruka and Rina offer to assist her, but after they finish, the teacher doesn't notice them and shuts the shed door tightly, trapping them inside. The girls become anxious and touch Haruka a bit too much, and just before it becomes more awkward, Garuka manages to light the door. Shizuki is asked to turn on the light so that they won't be afraid of the dark anymore and calm down. Seconds later, Rina's bodyguards manage to smash the door to get them out of there, although they don't look very friendly to our prota. Haruka is at the agreed place to meet Akiho for their date, and then receives a call from Akiho who tells her that he won't be able to go to the appointment that day because his father has hurt his lower back and they need to take him to the doctor. After sending well wishes to the father, Haruka wonders what to do next, since he's caught off guard with no plans. Then, Shizuki seems surprised to find Haruka alone and gets excited, as she can do whatever she wants with him. Following the usual hints and awkward moments, Shizuki asks Haruka to join her for clothes shopping, and shows him the various outfits she tries on. Later, Shizuki decides to try on swimsuits, and Haruka waits outside. But Shizuki insists he goes in, which makes him nervous. Immediately, the saleswoman offers swimsuits for busty girls, embarrassing Shizuki. Then, they eat at a restaurant, and Haruka finds the food too spicy and hot. Shizuki, a year older, teases him and treats him like a child. Despite the teasing, Haruka insists her food is delicious and enjoys being there, making her blush. They pass a theater, and Shizuki persuades him to watch a movie since they haven't met since camp, and she misses him, so Haruka agrees. After a busy day, Haruka is tired, but Shizuki still wants to do more and invites him to her house for lunch. Haruka is about to refuse, but Shizuki, in a flirtatious mood, tells her she has the house to herself. Haruka agrees, thinking Shizuki must be lonely without her parents, which upsets the girl. When they arrive, Shizuki rushes ahead and soon screams for help. Haruka runs to her room, worried, and finds her uncuffed with the window open, thinking it's a robbery. But Shizuki says she thought that it might be a fun idea to try using the handcuffs together. However, after putting them on, she misplaced the key and now can't locate it. Haruka becomes a bit upset, but Shizuki tells her she urgently needs to go to the bathroom. Haruka assists her as much as possible while maintaining certain boundaries. Next, she requests him to prepare the food and search for the key. Haruka, although frustrated because he realizes he is being manipulated, complies with her requests, even though he still can't find the key. He eventually carries her to his bed, covering her to prevent a cold, which delights Shizuki. She recalls how they supported each other as kids, and thanks Haruka for her kindness. Haruka then discovers the handcuff key was in her pocket all along and removes the handcuffs. Another day, Akiho hears Haruka and Shizuki discussing the cooking class, and Haruka expresses concern because it's not going well. In the kitchen, Akiho reflects on wanting to assist him, but upon hearing his praise for Shizuki's cooking, she feels envious. This fuels her resolve to aid him even more in their cooking class, which slightly intimidates Haruka. Observing her in class, she frequently, and quite abruptly, offers to help Haruka, intensifying Akiho's jealousy further, leading her to burn the food. Finally, the food turns out terrible, and he makes Rina taste it. Because she's friends with Akiho, she pretends it's delicious, though she hates it. Akiho feels guilty when she finds out, so Haruka decides to eat it too to support her, as boyfriends should. Haruka dreams of the perfect date with Akiho, meeting all her expectations. Upon waking, Akiho says something weird as usual, and Haruka agrees for himself that the image he had of her is very different from what she really is, but he likes her anyway. On the other hand, the exams are approaching, and Haruka is too worried because he doesn't really understand anything. Akiho then decides to help him, but her way of helping him is not the best. Then Seiya appears and gives her all the answers in order, which hints that she wants to be with him. When Haruka asks Kanata for help with math, she says she can only assist with whole problems. Then Tanaka asks Haruka to teach her, so she can do well on her exams too. At that moment, Misaki mentions wanting Haruka to teach her as well, to know what it's like to have a brother. But after an awkward moment, Misaki leaves, leaving just Kanata and Haruka to study. While they are studying, Haruka acts like a typical brother, but Kanata misunderstands this, becomes anxious, and ends up running away. Meanwhile, in town, a new ice cream shop opens, and the unfortunate girl working there has to deal with the most peculiar customers. He is thrilled because he can enjoy 2 popsicles simultaneously, and Shizuki is emotional because he can choose the cup size he desires. Akiho requests his ice cream to be served in an unusual manner with 2 banana brushes, just so he can take pictures, at an odd angle. One day, Haruyuka falls asleep after school, and everyone leaves except him. Akiho tries to wake him to leave together, but he's in deep sleep. Akiho strokes her hair, but when he wakes, she pretends to sleep. Seeing her gently asleep, Haruka strokes his hair, and Akiho can't keep pretending. Haruka feels embarrassed, but then Akiho shyly requests if she can caress his hair too, and she gets a little too close to him, which causes our protagonist to blush. Later on, the students in Haruka's class are required to sketch for their drawing class. Haruka attempts to sketch a landscape, but despite everyone's efforts to assist him, it doesn't turn out very well. Akiho then offers to pose as his model, so he can sketch her, and she stands still while he does so. And once she is settled in a spot for Haruka to sketch her, Haruka gazes at her intently. She recalls all the moments they've shared since they became sweethearts. She remembers all the times they laughed together, all the smiling, yes, and every single time they held hands, and so on. Then, without even realizing it, and completely captivated by Akiho's beauty, and the deep affection he feels for her, he unintentionally blurts out that he loves her. When he realizes his words, he apologizes for being bold. Overcoming shyness and blushing, Akiho tells him she loves him too. The lovebirds then enjoy a beautiful date. But on the way back, it rains heavily. Akiho persuades him to stay at a hotel to escape the rain, though nothing happens that night as they fall asleep. The next morning, when they want to go home, they enter a strange room that has a sign with the phrase, "May not leave this room until the couple has an exciting moment." Then a clock starts ticking with an allotted time of 60 min, and if they don't do anything in that time, they will be penalized with something on their rear ends. Seeing that this is the least worst of the options, they both decide to play along with the strange room and do exciting things, because it's been a long time coming. She makes it clear with a test what awaits if they don't comply. Haruka removes Akijo's restraints, also taking off her shirt and bra, leaving her bare-chested, causing great embarrassment. Akiho takes it off since he has clothes left, and impressed by her courage, Haruka hugs her. Then, he removes his own clothes, and as he's about to proceed, 2 dolls fall from their bags in a standard intercourse position. This is enough for the room to determine it's an exciting situation. Once done, the room sends them to the street already dressed, and they realize that they have become closer, even though nothing really happened. On another day, those who failed the health test must retake it. Haruka, Shizuki, Kanata, and Rin are there. And since Akiho has the highest grades, she will teach the class. That said, the perverted teacher leaves them alone with what she calls a ball game and has a vase shaped like well, that with papers inside. Akiho was never told what to do, so she reads the manual. Then they see that it is Haruka who must suffer what the papers say. One by one they take out papers with orders that are one worse than the other, and that I can't say them, but well, directly you can imagine. Seeing what awaits her, Haruka decides to flee the place. But at the door continues the perverted teacher, who is surprised because she thought that by then they would already be on top of each other, and then proposes an even worse game. And so ends the anime that has created so many emotions for us. I hope that in the next episodes the answers won't be long in coming. So if you liked this series, let me know in the comments. I, for my part, say goodbye as always, reminding you that you are always in time to subscribe to my channel and be part of this wonderful community.